What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. We're going to give you the 10 teams that have the biggest boom or bust potential this upcoming 2023 college football season. So what we're talking about is a team that has a really high ceiling and a really low floor, and it's going to be different for the ceiling and the floor is different for every team. You know, we have some teams that are top 10 teams that are going to be on this video, not because I think that they could potentially have terrible seasons, but just for their standard. Maybe it's a team that you see winning 11 or 12 games every year, and maybe they could potentially lose 3 or 4 games, or you look at the ceiling of maybe winning a national championship. But again, you're going to see the barometer is different for each team. So let's get into it, and we'll start with number 10. That's North Carolina. And so we'll go through and I'm going to kind of give you my thoughts on the team and why I think they could be here, and then we'll look at the schedule as well, just to show you that potential. So for North Carolina, so much talent on offense, so many weapons on that side of the ball. They should be able to score points. The defense, I think, is going to be improved, but maybe it doesn't, and maybe they struggle there and they lose some close games. So when you look at the boom potential, I mean, look at this schedule. They can beat South Carolina potentially, App State, Minnesota, Pitt, Syracuse, Miami, Virginia, Georgia Tech, Campbell, Duke, NC State will be tough on the road, and then Clemson, of course, will be tough on the road. But there's potential for them to go 11-1. I mean, they could have. I mean, I'm not going to say they have no chance against Clemson, but I think most people would expect them not to be able to win that game. But you look at the rest of their games, and they have a really good shot. Those are going to be games where they're, almost 50-50 games. They might be a slight favorite in a slight underdog in some of these. Maybe against South Carolina, they're a 3-point underdog. Or maybe on the road at NC State. But when I look at these teams, and the more I've evaluated these teams, I'm not as high on Pitt. I'm not as high on NC State. I know those games are on the road, and they'll be tough for sure, but there is a lot of potential there. And then you look at the flip side, they could lose to South Carolina. They could lose to Pitt and NC State on the road. And then you have Clemson. All of a sudden you're at 4 losses, slip up somewhere else. You have a 5th loss potentially. So there's a potential for them to be right there in the ACC championship game potentially, or potential for them to be closer to that 6-6 mark. So I think there's a lot of boom or bust potential here for North Carolina. Alabama is on the list here, and I think, of course, you talk about the boom winning a national championship, but the bust could be losing 3 or more games, and I think that's possible when you look at the schedule. This team, you have new coordinators, you have a lot of inexperienced players. Yeah, they have a lot of talent, and they have Nick Saban, of course, but there are question marks for Alabama, and there's no guarantee that they're going to be a national championship contender this year. When you look at the schedule, the big good news is they get Texas, Arkansas, Tennessee, LSU. They get all those games at home, some of their tougher games, and because of that, there's the potential for them to, I think, run the table. 11-1, 12-0 potentially in the regular season. But then you look at the bust potential. Texas almost beat them last year, and Texas, I think, is going to be even better this year. I know it's at home, but still, that's a tough game. Ole Miss is going to have an explosive offense. Texas A&M on the road will be tough. Tennessee beat them last year. LSU beat them last year. So there's potential for 3 or 4 losses potentially. I don't think they're going to lose, let's say 4, but 3, potential for 3 losses, and that would be a bust under Nick Saban. That would be a bad season. So that's why I've got them on here. Ohio State, kind of the same story as Alabama as far as the schedule goes. There's a lot of boom potential. Year 2 under Jim Knowles on defense, maybe they improve a lot. The offense has so many weapons. This team can win a national championship. But you look at the bust potential, maybe whoever winds up as starting quarterback, maybe they struggle. Maybe the offensive line struggles to protect. They struggle to run the football. Maybe the secondary struggles. And you look at the schedule with Notre Dame on the road. You've got Penn State. You've got Wisconsin on the road. You've got Michigan on the road. Those 4 games are going to be really tough. They're winnable games, and of course, the boom potential is there. This team could run the table, just like Alabama, 11-1, 12-0, but there is also bust potential for them to lose maybe 3 games or even potentially 4 games if they were to lose all 4 of those. I don't think that there's really much chance of that, but I think that 3 losses is possible. So you look at Ohio State, again, a lot of boom potential, but some bust potential there as well, and they come in at number 8. Number 7 is Louisville. This one is interesting because if you just look at their roster, they've got a good enough roster, I think, to be one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the ACC, but they've got so many new faces, a new coaching staff, where there is the potential where it just doesn't work. And year 1, it just doesn't go well for them. and they lose some close games. You look again at the boom potential. Notre Dame's at home. They don't play Clemson. They don't play Florida State. There's potential for this team legitimately to go 11-1 or 12-0 if everything clicks. And I'm not picking that. I'm not predicting that. But again, when you look at this schedule, it's all there for them. I mean, they've got the opportunity. If they turn out to be a good team, schedule sets up really well. But on the flip side, if things don't work out and year one it's not working and then they struggle, Georgia Tech's not going to be a guaranteed win. NC State's on the road. Pittsburgh's on the road. Notre Dame's a top 15 team. Miami's on the road. So there is potential for them to have a disappointing season, maybe a 7-5 type year. I don't think much worse than that, though, with the schedule. Duke, I forgot about Duke. Duke's going to be a good team this year. So Louisville right there at number 7. A lot of potential for it to go either way. Oklahoma, same story. When you look at their schedule, it really sets up well for them. The boom potential's there. The offense was great last year. You could say, year 2 under Brent Venables and some of the transfers they brought in, they're going to take a big step forward on that side of the ball. Or maybe they don't. Maybe it still doesn't work out and they struggle on defense once again this year. But when you look at the boom potential, Texas is going to be tough, but every other game is very winnable. They get TCU at home. Oklahoma State on the road and Bedlam's going to be tough. I think Kansas is going to be tough as well. UCF, you've got games that are going to be tough, probably close games, but they could possibly win them, and they could even beat Texas. I know the game wasn't close last year, but I think it's going to be a different story this year as far as at least being competitive. And so there's potential for them to go 11-1, a real potential for that, and to be in that playoff conversation. But on the other side, if the defense struggles again, you've got Cincinnati on the road, maybe a tricky game. Texas, I talked about UCF's going to be good. Kansas on the road, Oklahoma State on the road. BYU going out west, that could be a little tricky. TCU was really good last year, of course. So there is a potential for them to struggle again this year. I don't think they're 6-6. I think 7-5, 8-4 may be the worst case scenario for them. But it could go either way. We'll see how things play out for Oklahoma. Miami comes in at number 5. This is a team that has a lot of talent. You look at their roster, even last year, you have to wonder, how did they struggle so much with the talent that they had on their roster? And it's going to be even better this year. They brought in some big-time transfers. You look at the schedule, they get Texas A&M at home. They do have to play at North Carolina, at Florida State. Those will be tough games. I don't think that this team has a boom of potentially being a playoff team, but they have a boom of really turning things around, maybe going 9-3 or 10-2. Again, you look at North Carolina on the road and Florida State on the road, Texas A&M. Those 3 games are going to be really tough, and that's why I don't have a really high ceiling for them. But based off of where they were last year, they could definitely turn things around. But it could go south again. I talked about Texas A&M. Georgia Tech is a team that's going to be better this year. And I looked right over Clemson. They get Clemson at home, but still, Clemson's going to be favored in that game. North Carolina on the road, NC State on the road, Florida State on the road. Louisville's on there. I mean, so there's potential for this team to once again miss out on a bowl game. But again, I think there is potential for them to have a much better year and possibly get to 9 or 10 wins. So really, it could go either way for Miami, just like all of these teams. Wisconsin is up next. Really like the way their schedule sets up. And you look at the team, it's kind of like Louisville, a lot of new faces, new coaching staff. I think, again, just like with Louisville, when you look at their roster, they have a roster that I think is good enough to be one of the top 4 or 5 teams in the Big Ten. I think they definitely, if they play well, if it all works out for them in the offseason, everything comes together, they should win the Big Ten West. Maybe it doesn't, but if it does, they get Ohio State at home, and if they're able to win that game, you look at the rest of these games, they could win every other game on this schedule, and Wisconsin could be 12-0. I seriously think it's possible that they could go 12-0. 11-1 is probably more likely, or obviously it is more likely. But it's there. The potential is there. But then you look at the bust potential. Washington State beat them last year. They play Purdue on the road. Iowa, you got Illinois on the road. Ohio State again going to be really tough. Minnesota on the road to close things out. So if everything doesn't come together with the new players, all the new faces and everything, you could see them struggle again. Maybe go 7-5, 6-6. But if it does come together, then I think Wisconsin could be maybe a dark horse playoff contender this season. Number 3 is Texas A&M. You just look at the talent on the roster, but then you add Bobby Petrino as the offensive coordinator. These top 3 teams have a ton of boom or bust potential. it could all blow up. They could be awful this year, but they have the talent to be really good and even be potentially a playoff team. You look at the schedule, Miami's going to be tough. They do play Tennessee on the road. That'll be tough. LSU on the road, of course, Alabama. I don't know if there's potential for this team to get to 11-1 or 12-0. I think 10-2, though, is a possibility. Again, it's going to be tough with this schedule. But then you look at the bust potential. They could once again miss out on a bowl game. They could lose on the road at Miami, lose to Auburn or Arkansas, lose to Alabama, lose to Tennessee on the road, Ole Miss on the road, LSU on the road, and then you got South Carolina, Mississippi State. So we'll see which way it goes for Texas A&M, but a lot of potential for them to do really well, but again, potential for them to have a really disappointing season as well. Number 2 is Texas. Texas has a lot of boom potential. When you just look at their roster, if you sit down and you take a look at all the different positions, this team is good enough to be a playoff team. They really are. They have the talent, I'm telling you. They've got the quarterback. They've got weapons at receiver. They've got a nice group of running backs, a really good offensive line, a defense that should be solid. You got Steve Sarkisian calling plays, and he's proven that he can get it done on the offensive side of the ball. The potential is there. But they continue every year, it seems like, to lose games that they have no business losing. And if that happens again, if they can't find a way to win close games, you could see them losing to Baylor, maybe even losing to Oklahoma, losing to TCU on the road. You could see this team going 8-4, 7-5. But I really feel like the potential is there for them to go 11-1 or 12-0 and be, a Big 12 championship game away from the playoff, and the potential is there. I think they have a chance to beat Alabama. I know everyone expects, because it's on the road, Alabama's just going to roll in that game. I think that's going to be a close game. And then you look at the rest of the schedule. TCU will be tough on the road, but I think Texas clearly has a better roster. Oklahoma rivalry, you never know, but Texas, I think, is the better team. So there's a lot of potential for Texas, but again, if they can't find a way to win close games, could be another disappointing season. Our number 1 team is Colorado. I mean, this one's the easiest pick of them all. I don't think they have playoff potential as far as the boom, but given where they were last year, if they go 6-6 with the schedule that they have, that is a huge turnaround, and that is a huge boom. But I just talked about the schedule. This team could go 1-11 again. I mean, they really could. So many new faces. I mean, it's basically a totally different team. Really don't know what to expect. Can Deion Sanders get it done at the Power 5 level? We just don't know. And so this is clearly, to me, the team that has they're the biggest unknown in college football. Like I said, they could get on a run. Things could work out really well. They could beat Nebraska, Colorado State, Arizona State, Stanford, Arizona, Washington State potentially. I mean, 6 wins is possible if this team turns out to be really good, and maybe even they pull off an upset somewhere. But they could also lose to TCU, Nebraska, Oregon, USC, on the road at Arizona State, Stanford, UCLA, Oregon State, Arizona, Washington State, Utah. They could lose 11 games again. So they could be right back at 1-11, or they could really be improved 6-6, maybe even 7-5. It's going to be really intriguing to watch this Colorado team and see just how good they are. But again, a lot of potential to go up and a lot of potential to stay down with this schedule. So those are the 10 teams that I think have the biggest boom or bust potential in 2023. Would love to get your thoughts. Which teams do you think maybe should have been on this list that weren't? Or maybe there's a team on this list that you think shouldn't have been? Give me your thoughts and give me your comments down below.